My name is Zeman Sao, and I'm the president and CEO of the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging. On behalf of the New American Task Force and a partnership with the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, we want to welcome you to this month's webinar, where we'll be talking and joining us by our partner and good friends at the World Trade Utah Centered. They will be sharing resources that they could provide to support Utah businesses around international trade, as well as updates on developing issues that could and is affecting global trade policy. With that, I'll go ahead and jump in. We are looking forward to the providing a great support to you in the upcoming year. I can't believe it's November, and in just 2 years, we'll hit the 2026. We would love to get your input on what you would like to see from the New American Task Force, webinars, topics, and discussions that you want us to be providing to you. We have created a survey to get your input, and we'll greatly appreciate any thoughts and inputs that we could provide for us. There is on your screen a QR code. I would recommend and strongly recommend that you download that or click on that and give us your suggestions for webinars in the upcoming year. I'm going to turn it over to the newest member of our team, who will be providing some community announcements. We want to welcome Nelson, who is the new director for our New American Initiatives at the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging, and will be working closely with GoEO on this effort to support New Americans and global talent in the state of Utah. Nelson, welcome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the introduction there. Well, there is a few things happening as always on our state in regards to support for New American community. One of them is led by the Division of Professional Licensing of the Utah Department of Commerce. As you can see here, there is opportunities for internationally trained mental health professionals, which with new pathways for them to get licensed here on the state. So November 20, 6 to 8 p.m. at Industry Salt Lake City, which is also home to the Center of Economic Opportunity and Belonging offices. Scan the QR code if you want, and then participate, do the registration so you can participate on that event. The listed licenses are there. Let's go to the next slide, please. We also have, a conglomerate of Federal Reserve banks, which are launching this survey to receive information about credit, small business credits. So we invite you to participate on that survey and represent the business community. Next slide. The Suazo Center is doing several different events, and these are, for some reason, not updated. It seems like this is an old slide. We need to refresh this page. But there is several events that they're doing, and one of them is a Free Spanish Entrepreneur Resilience workshop happening in November 13, 6 to 7 p.m. in Alton. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Well, it is a pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Ben Collender is a with the World Trade Center. Ben, if I don't have your note written down, I don't want to make sure that I give you full credit. Is the Chief Operations Officer,
Chief of
Chief of
Staff.
Staff, Chief of
That's right.
Staff.
Close.
Wow, yes, Chief of Staff for the World Trade Center of Utah, which does remarkable work in a community to make sure that our businesses are able to grow internationally. They also provide tons of fun and very engaging trade missions. And this past months, I know that you are engaging in a lot of trade missions, including going to um, just came back from Australia and now in India and so on and so forth. And so we're very lucky to have Ben with us today to talk about the World Trade Center and all the resources that they have to offer. And with that, I want to turn it over to Ben.
Thanks, Zia. I appreciate it. And thanks for all you're doing at the center and with the task force. I know it sounds like we're busy, but I know you guys are, doing a lot in our community. So thank you for that. I'm going to share my screen really quick here. And I'm also going to focus my presentation today on the tariff aspect and what we do as the World Trade Center Utah as it pertains to tariffs. We do have other things that we do, as Z mentioned. We go on international business trips and we take companies with us to explore new markets. We do business research. But a lot of this presentation is going to be centered around, what we're doing for tariffs. We get a lot of questions about that. It's one of the hottest topics right now. So with that, I'm going to go to the next slide. So overall, all these programs that I'm talking about really go back to our core mission of accelerating growth for Utah companies through our global network programs and services. So all of the tariff conversation should really be thought about in that respect, as well as our other programs and services. So we always say we want to make it as easy doing business around the road as around the world as across the street. And, that's one thing that particularly in the tariff climate can be difficult, but we're doing our best to break this down for Utah companies and to help them understand, about tariffs and how to navigate them. So sometimes this can be an overwhelming situation for many of our businesses. So we like to get out the word and appreciate the opportunity to do that here about what you can do as a company if you're facing these tariffs. So first thing is, we often hear some of the rhetoric in the news and in the media about how we're going to put this tariff on another country, we're going to get them. And then we hear from the businesses, hey, I have to pay this much to get my good out of customs. What's often lost, and maybe now is more common sense, but generally speaking, the tax is the tariff is a tax on foreign goods paid by the importer. And so that's important because, we get this and it happens when the good is brought into the country. So not when it's ordered. So we get a lot of confusion around, oh, I thought another country was going to pay for that, or I ordered it 2 years ago and it just took forever to get through, but it's being delivered, a week after the tariff goes into effect or something. The reality is, it's paid by the importer, the U.S. company or individual, and it's paid at the time of import. So we hear a lot of the reasoning behind why these tariffs are going into place. World Trade Center Utah isn't taking, we just look at this as objectively as we can to say, like, look, if these tariffs are happening, let's look at them critically, but let's look at them as objectively as possible in that light. And so really what we hear about oftentimes for the reasons of these tariffs being implemented are, national security, revenue, reduce our national debt, balance trade, reshore manufacturing. And it's like, a lot of what we hear is like, oh, it's how is it revenue and reshoring manufacturing? How is it, national security and balancing trade? And, the argument's been made, and we heard a lot about this in some of the Supreme Court conversations, which we'll go into more later, of really the national security is all of these things all put together. So some of the core argument sort of traces back to, well, we have a huge national debt now because of a trade imbalance, and we need to repair our supply chains and domestic manufacturing and manufacturing industrial base. And oh yeah, revenue comes as a result of that, but isn't really the core driver in all of this. And so this is sort of the framework I would encourage folks to think about, because it does get really messy really fast when you hear one individual piece of the puzzle. It's more of a flow and a big picture where all this comes together. So in December or January, probably early January of 2025 this year, we convened Utah businesses around that are doing international trade around the topic of tariffs. Knowing that a tariff-friendly president was coming into office, we wanted to get as ahead of this as possible and asked, you know, what should we be thinking about? How should we be thinking about it? And so we surveyed businesses, over 100 responses from businesses about what their concerns were or what they're facing now, just even under the threat of tariffs that was coming. And this was before President Trump was even in office. And these three major themes developed. So the major themes are, these tariffs have risks. There's a lot of uncertainty with this, which can be paralyzing for companies. And to be globally competitive, there are certain things that the US just cannot do on its own, and that tariffs may have an unintended consequence to block. And so these were sort of our pillars when we talk about these as World Trade Center Utah. We get a lot of calls on these from policymakers or from others to say, how should we be thinking about these? What should we be categorizing some of the mitigation strategies around? And this really is it. And these themes have held pretty consistently throughout. So credit to many of our Utah businesses that talked to us early on about some of the challenges they were seeing and some of the challenges they were already facing even before this administration took office. So a little bit of background on tariffs and tariff types. So we've got three major buckets of tariffs here. The first is, a national security tariff, which is a 232 tariff. You'll hear a lot about these in the news. There's also a 301 tariff. This is anti-competitive practices. This goes through USTR, our trade representative. And then IEEPA, an economic emergency tariff. So this is a tool being exercised specifically by the White House right now on a lot of these global tariffs. These are the tariffs. Also, the IEEPA tariffs are the ones that we're hearing a lot about in the news around the Supreme Court. They get much of the attention because they are the tariffs that happen the quickest, are often the most acute and impactful for businesses. So the 232 and 301 tariffs sometimes have substantially higher rates, ranging from 25 to 50% compared to what most are used to with the baseline duty. IEEPA, the global baseline is 10%, and you see that go up to, at one point it was 130% on China. In some cases it was even higher for certain products. So these tariffs are, the 232 and 301 tariffs generally are pretty sound, have a sound legal footing, and take some time, so they allow businesses to transition out of a market when they go into effect or figure out domestic manufacturing. The IEEPA tariffs are much more acute, fast moving, and create a lot of uncertainty. So that's a lot of what you'll hear about in the news, but these 232 and 301 tariffs are happening quite frequently as well. And just to contrast a little bit what we saw, to compare administrations, I've always, over the last, for context, I was in the Obama administration and, had seen this after Trump 1 started, of this initial wave of tariff rhetoric. And my comment was, this maybe solves more issues than people realize or are talking about, not to say support or don't support, but more to say that these tariffs are going to be the wave of the future, and we're going to see this more and more. So, and we're going to see that as I walk through some of these slides, because this is the initial Trump 1 administration. Most of these were focused on steel and aluminum. We had some smaller 201s, and then the China 301 tariffs on some of these products from China specifically for anti-competitive practices. So we go into the Biden administration, and what happens, or what maybe some had hoped, is that these tariffs would roll back. But instead, okay, maybe the list isn't as long, but they were expanded. There were some provisions and relaxing that were nuances on things like steel and aluminum and others, but for the most part, the tariffs increased. I'm not going to walk through the full set of tariffs now, but there are pages of tariffs in the new administration. Maybe I'll take a shot. No, I won't let's see if it'll do it. Can you guys see this screen that I'm sharing with the tariff dashboard? Z, is that showing up okay?
Nope. I'm seeing a boat with a bridge.
Oh yeah, that's our website.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
So this is a little bit of context of what we're facing under this Trump administration compared to it. So this is our dashboard. We track all of the tariffs as they come through and have them on our website so that our Utah businesses can see all the latest tariffs and have primary resources for specific language. So if they're wondering if their tariffs will apply or not, they can click the link and find out. So you can see this is like threats or new tariffs. We went Switzerland, India, China, Mexico, Canada, China again here in a series of lists. Some of these are tariffs that are being modified to bring it down as part of the China deal. Some of them have been in the past tariffs to bring it up. Many of the other categories are going up unless there's a deal. So these are the 301 types. These are the 232s. It's everything. So this, without going into details here, this is how many tariffs that we're facing compared to the first administration. This is only one page. We have more
So
pages.
Ben, I don't think we're seeing that, but we are seeing the website, and I think that people could go into the website and be able to see that
that's
dashboard,
helpful.
right?
Sorry,
No problem. I just want to make sure that people are seeing all the great information you're providing for them.
Let me try it. Let me try it here. I think what the boat was a picture of our website, but on the slides. So maybe we'll try this.
Oh, now we see it. Now we can see it. Yeah.
So now you can see, like, these are the ones that I was referencing. Sorry about that. Thank you, Z. So these are the tariffs that I'm talking about, is like, this is the amount. It's just, it could be overwhelming if you're not prepared or in regular dialogue with somebody about what these tariffs are, what they mean for a business, or even as an individual consumer, you may be asking yourselves, like, well, why am I seeing this increase? Well, this really goes back to a lot of the why on some of the products that may not be available right now or may be increasing in price. And so that's the sort of the tariff climate that we're facing right now. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. So anyway, you can always go to our webinar, our website, which is WTCUtah.com/tariffs, to see the full dashboard, share it with others as well. And we do a briefing every Friday for our business community interested in asking questions about the tariffs or getting updates. And so we update on what the latest happened, what the latest happenings were from the week, but also bring on some specialized content. And so a lot of businesses, we get this feedback consistently. I don't know where to start. The information is too hard to find, and it's confusing. And to this, we've sort of structured our responses around that, basically organized our website to help support Utah businesses looking for information. And we've created this webinar to help get that information out in a different format as well. I'm going to talk a little bit, just very briefly, about the foreign trade zone. So this is one of the only tools to avoid tariffs right now. It's applicable to businesses, not individuals, but typically makes sense for businesses importing more than $1 million in goods. It doesn't solve everything right now in this tariff climate, but it does solve a lot, particularly for those companies exporting some of the things that they import. So if you import a product from, let's say, China, you do some transformation of the project or product and export it out to another country, you never pay the tariff, as an example. And so the foreign trade zone is one mitigating tool. The other is bonded warehouses. So those are pretty much the only two, alongside the typical duty drawbacks, if applicable. So in most cases, these tariffs are sticking, though. Not every case, but most cases. And the way to really get ahead for businesses is to really look through what that means for how to take advantage, and basically look at it less on what's my cost yesterday versus what's my cost today, and look at it more so what's the cost it takes me to develop this product versus what's the cost for my competitor. I think that's the most helpful way for businesses to look at this and actually go on offense with these tariffs, instead of just what we see a lot of times is companies, their initial reaction is that this is overwhelming. And so they'll stop on they'll just freeze and not know what to do or where to go, instead of thinking about going on offense and what that looks like. And so not all areas are eligible, primarily along the Wasatch Front. And so that's mapped out here. Our weekly briefing I already talked about. Every Friday at 9:30 a.m. And if you want to sign up, it's on our website. So one thing to keep an eye on is, looking at this objectively, this is maybe arguably not all bad. And I know that's hard to hear, especially if you're a business being impacted or an individual on some of these tariffs. But there are some trade deals coming from this. And these trade deals, in some cases, maybe a country was already going to invest a certain amount of money or in a project or whatnot. But in many cases, this appears to be new money, new agreements, new things that are bringing net benefits in these trade deals to the United States. And so we're also tracking those deals on our dashboard. We're not as up to date as the tariffs. We try and do real time on the tariffs, and sometimes the dashboards or the deal dashboard takes a little bit longer, but we do our best to track those as well. Where I'm going to spend a bit of my time now, I'm going to skip that one and go to this slide. We're always asked, as the World Trade Center Utah, what's your crystal ball? What's your crystal ball? What do tariffs look like? Where is this all going? What can I expect? And we can't predict the future, but we can inform a way to think about these tariffs, to know what to look for, so that it is easier to see what's coming and what it means for certain opportunities in other markets, right? So the first is to think of these tariffs in three buckets. Really, the safest bucket is USMCA, our trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And then China, which is maybe the riskiest bucket, where right now it's where a lot of affordable sourcing comes from around the world, comes from China, but it may have more significant tariffs on it in the future. So we just saw a major trade deal come into place where lower tariffs were maintained, but we never know if that's going to change tomorrow, and that appears to be the reality right now. And so it's a riskier move right now. It seems in the very short term that it's I don't want to call it a safe play, but it pencils business wise if you can do business there right now. But it may be worth considering, what does it look like in the long term? Is this a safe play or not? Or can I continue to source here? Or do I just need to get what I've got out and then explore something else? And then the third bucket to really look at is the global market. And so the global market, really everything but USMCA and China. And the way to think about the global market is it's going to be it's going to be fragmented in its benefits and its risks and its tariff rates and its ability to source for different materials. It's going to be completely varied, but it boils down to looking at it in terms of the specific business case for each country. And the closer you get to the United States in general, the less risky an investment or a deal will be. And the further away you get, it's going to be a little bit riskier, maybe more expensive tariff-wise. Not always, but maybe, right? So thinking of it in three buckets, I would also say timing of midterms is going to play a role. We've seen a lot of political pressure building, particularly in the House around the tariffs on Brazil and coffee. So that little things like that sort of play a role and bubble up because you can start to feel some of the discussion shift around what Congress wants to see in terms of limitations on presidential power for implementing these tariffs. So you also we saw last week that the Supreme Court heard a significant case regarding the IEEPA tariffs. And so the oral argument was just heard. Typically in the run of how these play out for the Supreme Court, we would expect to see a decision around June. It's likely that we're going to see something significantly earlier, perhaps in, nobody really knows, but maybe January of next year. So that could determine the legality of these IEEPA tariffs and will automatically set in motion what next steps look like on these. So that's the most significant thing to monitor is oral argument happened. It's not clear based on that oral argument what that will result in, but it's something that will certainly impact tariffs one way or the other. They may make them legal, they may make them illegal, they may make them legal and send it to Congress to clarify pieces of statute that need to be clarified. So it's pretty open-ended in my estimation after the oral arguments. And so this is sort of the wider way to think about these tariffs and monitor them. And the other thing is just, you don't hear much about this now, but the words Trade Promotion Authority, which is basically in the Constitution, Congress, this power normally resides with Congress on trade and trade promotion. And they delegate certain powers to the White House, the president, because it's really hard to negotiate, for example, trade deals if you are negotiating with 535 elected officials. It's a little bit easier to negotiate trade deals if you are working with one person or one office. And so they delegate many of the trade powers to the administration. And so you'll see maybe a discussion around this pop up that says what's reasonable in that realm and what's not. And that will inform a lot of what the future looks like for these tariffs as well. But as it stands now, the future remains uncertain. And it's one of those things to just stay informed on if you're being impacted by it. And also consider World Trade Center Utah a resource. So we have a lot of tools to work on around this, whether it's rules of origin, so identifying where your product came from, and so therefore what rate is attached to the good. What your product is classified as can make a huge difference on what you're bringing in and paying in tariffs. Also, where you're sourcing from. I mean, if you're going from one market today with a certain classification, maybe it's worth looking at another market altogether. And how do I think about that? What do I do? And so we're a resource here for our Utah business community to think through what the options are when this situation could otherwise feel very overwhelming and difficult to navigate. So that's it for my presentation today. Hopefully that wasn't too much on tariffs. I know sometimes it could be a little overwhelming and it depends on the audience where the interest is, but yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to address this group.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that presentation and overview of one of the most complex topics in our, as many, amidst other complex topics, and you did a great job in terms of just providing a great overview and the resources that the World Trade Center provides and will continue to provide to support businesses in Utah. I'm going to open it up to discussions and questions from our audience today, just so that we individuals know this webinar is being recorded, so it will be shared amongst our task force members after this. And so therefore, I do encourage that you ask questions for those who are not here today, because your questions will be important. Ben, I'm going to start with a question that I have, and trends that I've been seeing in the community. And I see that we do have some partners in the call today that supports smaller businesses. And I think I was on my way back and was listening to NPR, and they were talking about the impact of tariffs, especially on small businesses that provides, food, ethnic food, or even clothing in a community, and how that is affecting tariffs. I mean, you provide some really great resources in terms of your website, but it might be difficult for smaller entrepreneurs to navigate. I'm wondering, for resource partners, like I see the International Rescue Committee is on the call today, how would they be able to reach out to you, and what are some of your suggestions or recommendations in terms of for smaller entrepreneurs in navigating today's very complex global trade environment?
Yeah, so you can always reach out to us, info@wtcutah.com. And we'll get back to you. Depending on the question, it goes to a different area of the organization. And so we always encourage folks to go through that channel with questions. And to answer your question about what to do for small and medium-sized businesses, that was also a key takeaway of the white paper that we did, was that they're going to be impacted in an outsized way. And that's, depending on how you define it, that's all Utah is basically, as small and medium-sized businesses. Thinking about the Fortune 500s, they're going to be able to navigate this because they can, more strategically move assets, have cash on hand to make major investments, and change up their supply chains in a way that will be more difficult for a smaller business. And as you get further down from the 500 or to the Fortune 500s to just traditionally large businesses, it gets harder. And then from traditionally large businesses to maybe, let's say, an SBA defined small business, which is still pretty large, you're getting, it's even harder to navigate. So as you get down to like a mom and pop shop, or even, a decent sized company that's growing, in Utah terms, it can be very difficult to say, where do I go, or what do I do? And that really is where we're here as a resource for the state, is to say, okay, every situation is completely different. I couldn't give you one overarching, here's how you solve it if you're a small business, but you can reach out to us and we can have discussions, because every situation is completely different. We had somebody importing bridal veils from abroad, and if you're on here, we see you, we know you're we've had major manufacturers known in the state that are trying to figure out the steel and aluminum situation. We've had so many varieties of examples that the best thing to do is start the conversation and know where the pain point is, because it's so multifaceted, it's hard to give one answer. But to have somebody or a trusted team that can have a back and forth with you and provide resources to get you the right information, I think that's the best answer I can give. That really is going to move the needle on the small and medium-sized businesses.
Okay, thank you for that. And please just, if you could just unmute to ask any questions, but I'm going to put Nielsen on the spot here. Nielsen, who's just joined the team, is also the chair of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And I'm also curious to hear from you, Nielsen, like, what are you seeing, what are you hearing from the Hispanic-owned businesses, and how is tariff affecting them right now? And if you could just maybe use that as an opportunity to start a conversation and see if we can chime in a little bit.
And real quick, before Nelson jumps in, we have a question in the Q&A. See?
Oh, great. Okay. So this is Shane. Shane, do you want to just unmute? Are you able to unmute?
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
It's better to hear from you in real voice than me trying to articulate your question.
Thank you, Z. Thank you. I know that for the longest time, we've kind of been caught in this situation where Utah has always been like a small business entrepreneur type environment, and what is actively being done to provide enterprise services to these small businesses rather than waiting for services just to happen on their own. And then the second question that I have as well is more related to what can we do to actually leverage the Silicon Slopes and tech industries that we have, where we are clearly a leader, in many of these areas. We're not the Googles or the Amazons or we're not those. Yet the impact that we're having on clients and the tech industry is so vast. How do you bridge that gap as the World Trade Center and some of our financial institutions?
Yeah, are you asking specifically what services services relating to tariffs and responding to tariffs, or just more generally?
I think so. Tariffs is the challenge now.
Yeah.
I think the question is more generally, where tariffs, you're going to basically it does impact the importer. I mean, it slows trade down. It damages trade. I'm not a fan of that, at all. The question is, though, from a broader perspective, what additional services? Where you basically indicated that you do a good job of trying to reach out and notify and educate. I'm kind of wanting to dig deeper into that.
So the first thing is, when we stand up services or do things at the World Trade Center in Utah, we're pretty targeted in what we're trying to do. So, for example, so I have a trade background. I was in trade before I came to World Trade Center Utah. So I have a lot of familiarity with the different types of tariffs and what that looks like and how it's being used. And so I got a lot of demand for meetings. Well, for me, that says, let's create a webinar and open it up and have a wider dialogue with anybody who's interested in joining. So it's a public invite every Friday at 9:30 a.m. that companies can sign on and ask questions, because sometimes there's a temptation, I think, and maybe we've even had this too from time to time, is try and solve the whole world of tariffs. As a state or as a nonprofit in a state, we have very limited control of what we can do on the tariff implementation side. So our job is really to help navigate it and help companies think about it in a way that they can do something and make decisions from it. And so, so for every company that really feels different in this tariff climate and what those decisions are. So the first thing is meeting those companies face to face to have the dialogue. And we do that every Friday morning. We keep them short, the 30 minutes, give companies opportunity for Q&A, and put in, as you talk about enterprise solutions, we've had several enterprise solutions come in and present in those meetings, so that they could say, this is what we do relating to tariffs, so that companies facing tariff issues know where to go for resources. So that's one way. So we do it through the webinar, but we also do it through our dashboard, because part of the problem that we faced with tariffs is nobody knew where to go for the primary source language for tariffs. So, and there are different flows of information that come out. So when the information initially comes out on a tariff, it'll be dropped from the White House sometimes, but sometimes through the Bureau of Industry and Security, sometimes through USTR's website, sometimes through the Federal Register. And there's a flow that ultimately goes down from the Federal Register to customs messaging. And when that happens, that says this is the actual details you have to pay attention to. This is a language that will be used to implement the tariffs, because customs is the one collecting the duties. So that guidance to the field is really the letter that you've got to pay attention to if you're a business. But getting that level of information to businesses can be tough. And so what we've organized our whole dashboard around is to get those primary source pieces out there and to communicate this out to the public. So that's, it's not the, hey, here's a perfect, enterprise solution for all things tariffs. Those exist. They're really expensive through consulting firms. And we've even had some conversations internally with some folks in the tech space to help make connection points to figure this out here in Utah. But that's something that takes time to develop, because some of the things like the rules on these tariffs can get really complex really quick. They're not simple. In some areas, certain laws apply. In some areas, they don't for certain tariff types. Rules of origin, how much percentage of a good has to be made in a country, can change by the product or even by the trade deal. And so you get really complex really quick when you're talking about what this looks like. And oftentimes businesses are working with a set number of products, and they're not trying to figure out everything. They're just trying to figure out one thing, and knowing where to go on that specific language for their one thing is probably the most valuable. Did that answer your question?
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm putting Nelson back into it. And I also want to add to the caveat here too, that when we talk about trade, it's both ways, right? And I think that people think about tariffs and it's trade just coming into the United States, but it's also export, which is really important to the Utah economy. And a lot of new Americans in Utah are also exporters in addition to importers. So Dilson.
Yeah, thank you. Well, a lot of the questions that we've been getting lately, and as you mentioned, Ben, it's hard to pass that information down, right, to these small business owners when we add layers of language, right, when we have other languages on that these entrepreneurs speak. Are there any reliable sources of updates about tariffs in other languages that you know of that are available?
That is a great question. I have not seen it in other languages, and that is a tough one because the language is so technical and is also so technical and is so varied. Yeah, that's a tough one. I haven't seen it out there. I think about us taking on that role at World Trade Center Utah, and it hurts my brain a little bit. Because if you look on our dashboard and all of the different tariffs going out, it's an operation just to get that thing even on the dashboard and then to get it translated. I don't know, but I do know that that's a major concern. And, as service providers, I know one answer is that, at World Trade Center Utah, we have people who speak different languages, right? So that's really helpful in reaching out to us, because our team can look at the language on the website and go through it. And often I would say also, it's worth noting that the dashboard isn't for everyone. If you're just like the PR person in your firm, or even sometimes the CEO, if you speak English, you'll get lost in that thing. We're trying to break down this barrier with the webinars and help to walk people through examples in the webinars when we get these questions. But you have to like be almost on the logistics side of things or the operations side for it to become useful, or be walked through it, right? And so, yeah, it's a challenge. And I mean, one thing I would encourage is, I know we have organizations in our community who can help do some of that. I mean, we speak different languages here and others do, and that's probably the easiest fix that I can think of, because it's just so fast moving too that it's tough. And if you don't have the trade language, to update it would be really tough. So that's my short answer. I know it's not a good one, but
Yeah, but it starts a conversation, right?
yeah.
Of maybe finding ways. Maybe some of our listeners or others may have resources that are available to support also on this work, right? Um, as you know, a lot of and I'm representing the largest majority of internationals here in the state, or immigrants here in the state, which are Hispanic, right? About 20% of the state is represented there, but many of them work in construction. There is a lot of food services, restaurants, manufacturing, agricultural sectors, and these areas get really affected with changes to exports and imports. Are there exceptions, programs that can help small businesses offer, offset these tariff costs? Are there resources available on those specific industries?
Right now, the biggest consideration is information, because what we're seeing is, construction maybe has been impacted, but I would say, it's easy to say this if not being living day to day in the construction industry. A lot of the bottom line numbers I see are probably in the neighborhood of 20% impacts in the aggregate, meaning a lot of folks are probably sourcing still from the US, or the tariff costs haven't fully made it through the supply chain for things further upstream that maybe are being imported. Ag is one that when it hits hard, it hits fast, especially with these IEEPA tariffs, because it hits a consumer more than just the business, because these goods perish. You can't keep them in a warehouse. You can't. So you're seeing a lot of that impact, hit more acutely with some of our restaurants or grocery stores. If you're shopping at the grocery store and you see some of this, but yeah, so in terms of resources for that, there's just a way to think about it first. And then in terms of resources, information and navigating it is probably the best thing right now. Because if you think about what the government's trying to do, they're trying to make it more difficult to rely on foreign partners, and in many cases defined as foreign adversaries, on a lot of the imports. And so it's going to have to change the way we do business. And what the government doesn't want to do is keep the same path of doing, like on one side, almost be fighting itself to transition to this. And so some of these areas are just going to be tougher, and it's going to be about innovating out of it in new ways. And whether that's importing from a different market if the tariff is high from where a company is importing, or relying on the USMCA agreement, or things like that. It's going to be more information based than it will be a financial resource in what I've seen.
Mm-hmm. And I think that many of these Hispanic businesses, specifically here in the state, have been morphing and adapting, right, and trying to find opportunities on the challenges that we find with tariffs, but it's affecting them in the short term heavily. Some of them. Especially we've seen a lot of effects on, imported food and also exports, right? Like C was saying, it's not just imports, but also exports.
Yeah, retaliations as
yeah,
well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
I would say one more thing is that when you think about where it's easiest to probably do business right now, and I know this isn't, a blanket statement that everything is this way, but most things from Mexico are within USMCA. And if it's a USMCA compliant good, meaning it's produced in Mexico, you're gonna have a better situation than most. I know there was like a tomato case that was hit and has some impacts, and it's more of a removal of a commitment not to hit Mexico with anti-dumping. So it's not even an actual tariff. It was a removal of an agreement to not do anti-dumping. So these things pop up, and they have real impacts, and they're painful. But generally speaking, Mexico's better than most And so at least looking at it in that lens, that's maybe helpful.
Yeah. I believe, see, there is a question open right now. Would you like me to read it, or would we
Yes,
like
please.
Shane to Happy to read it.
Shane can come off mute
Okay.
if
Yeah,
you
Shane, go
would
ahead.
like to.
Sure. Thank you. I think, please, could you just confirm that are tariffs impacting services as well with different countries? I would imagine online sales would be impacted, but is it impacting services as well? And if so, who's policing it? How would we protect ourselves, from getting into trouble?
Yeah. There are a couple of ways to look at services and online sales. One is an unexpected impact, one that was unexpected on my end in terms of tourism. So tourism into the United States took a hit when these tariffs were originally announced. People didn't necessarily think that they were wanted here or welcomed here as a tourist, or it became more expensive, or they just didn't like the image that the US was putting out and didn't want to be in the United States for a vacation, thought they'd spend it somewhere else. So we saw a significant drop in tourism, which impacts our service industry even here. So that's one thing we haven't really touched on that has real impacts for our state. Another thing is on the digital side, what's interesting is tariffs hit at the port of entry. So you don't have to put a digital good on a ship and bring it into the United States. So it's really a hard thing to tariff, right? But we've heard a lot of discussion around this. And there are two active investigations going on right now to address digital taxes. And one of them is the Trump administration is looking into how to think about taxes for the service or digital industry through an investigation on countries that impose value-added taxes on the United States and have other non-tariff barriers, but have significant exports to the United States relating to digital services. So I can't remember the countries listed off the top of my head, but that's one investigation that's ongoing through the trade representative right now to figure that out, but we haven't received any updates on it. It was announced early in the year and still haven't seen a ton of progress on that one. But the other one that probably has gotten more attention in the news is on film. So the president announced a tariff on film. There's been no formal action taken, but what it has spurred is a lot of discussion about how you would actually even do it. And maybe there has been. I'd have to go look. I don't think there's been formal action taken, but I could be wrong on that. But the question is around, what does film mean? Because they say film produced in the United States or outside of the United States, trying to move production back to the United States. But is that a tax that Amazon has to pay? How do you enforce it? How do you, like, if they through Amazon Prime, if they have it and get sort of fees off of their platform for it, how do you do it? Does it count as when you purchase a digital copy of it? How does that look? What if it's digital and you don't have to export it, but you buy it at a Walmart and it was produced in the United States, right? Like, it brings up all types of different scenarios and questions related to how to look at digital taxes that I don't think, well, maybe it was fully appreciated, and just the known pieces, you have to look more into it to figure out what the tariff regime would look like, or the taxing regime on those digital taxes would be implemented. But I haven't seen any as of now that have been implemented, but I know that there's some discussion about how to do that.
Thank you.
Well, those are a really robust discussion with the questions and answer segment. This is great. But although we are almost at time, so we have 4 minutes left, and I want to be very respectful of everyone's time. I'm going to open it up one more time to see if anyone has any quick questions before we wrap up today's webinar. Wonderful. I know that this is a very complex topic, as I indicated, and is moving pretty quickly. This is also a plugin for those of you who have not responded to a survey. If there is a specific area that you want us to go dig deeper into in the realm of imports and exports, please put those in the survey so that we can work with our partners at the World Trade Center and perhaps do another webinar that are more focused on a specific topic. Because I know that it is a moving target and is very, very complex. And this is a great just overview and opening up I guess, the can of worms so that we can see what worms are in there and we can digest the different size worms in future webinars. I want to thank everyone for coming to today's webinar. This is recorded and we'll send out the recordings to the rest of the task force. On behalf of the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and the Center for Economic Opportunity and Belonging, we want to again thank Ben Collender from the World Trade Center for joining us today. We look forward to additional conversations in upcoming webinars and wish everyone a great evening.
Thank you, Z. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.